And so I also will not be reading the guild chat or like Discord channels or anything. So if you don't want to say something on Discord, you can write the question in the Twitch chat, and then I'll see it there. Okay, so let me just so have everybody opened the Twitch now?
Yeah.
Okay, so so the picture I got here, I don't think there's any stream delay. If there is, just but I don't think there is. So this is the picture of Naxxramas. When we zone into Naxxramas, we zone at the center, and from there we can go into the different 4 wings. There is not really any like must. You don't have to clear it in any particular order. You can choose whatever wing you like. And the officers have had a meeting today, so they probably have figured out what we're going to start out with, but I don't really know. So we're just going to go through the video that I found and just talk about the bosses in that video. So in that video, they're starting with Spider Wing, which is up here. So from moving to the center, we're gonna get into some trash packs here, and then we get into the first room where Anubrican is. And in the video, we got just the bosses in the video, because it's probably gonna be pretty long no matter what. So at least we just cut to the boss fights. And if at any point you have any question or anything, you just jump right in, because that's probably the easiest thing. And I can pause the video too. So I'm gonna speed this up. So this is double speed. Okay, so this is Anubrican. That's the boss, and there are 2 ads called the Crypt Guards. When we do the pull, the 2 Crypt Guards are gonna be pulled, and they're gonna be tanked about here, and the boss remains over there where he is. The reason why you want to pull the Crypt Guards and kill them over on this side will be clear later. But try to kill them on top of each other. They do a web on the melee, but as long as nobody over aggroes, that should be fine. But if you really want to try hard, you can pop a free action potion here. So the Crypt Guards are dead. When they die, there's corpse scarabs spawn. Mages take care of that, and then basically move on to the boss. So this ability here, the bones coming out of the ground, that's called Impale. Everybody who gets hit by this get knocked up into the air. They take a lot of physical damage, and then they also take falling damage when they down again. So if you use a Knock and Fogger elixir to get the slow fall, then you cut away the falling damage, and then you only take the initial damage from the spikes. Mages can also slow fall, priests can use levitate, so bring light feathers.
Do you know how much percentage-wise the fall damage is?
I believe that's like 20%.
Alright.
15 or 20, something around that. It deals physical damage, so if you're wearing plate, like you'll take less damage from the impale, but as a caster, you probably want to have a slow fall effect. So right here, you were just face rolling on the boss, and you can see a timer up here. It's called Possible Locust Swarm. Locust Swarm is a big AoE effect that is going around the boss when it goes when he casts it. By that time, all the melee will need to have run away from the boss. You don't want to be near the boss when the Locust Swarm is going on. And also the tank will have to move away from the boss. And what he'll do is he'll use this area here, and he'll have a hunter. We can't see it now, but there will be a hunter somewhere over here with aspect of the pack, and giving him movement speed so that he can outrun the boss. Let's see, we actually see it in the video. When the Locust Swarm happens, there will also be a Crypt Guard that spawns, so that will need to be picked up and brought to where the other Crypt Guards were killed. Now we also see a couple of corpse scarabs, and we see one person has died, probably from impale. Whenever somebody dies, 5 corpse scarabs spawn. So you might see corpse scarabs spawning during the encounter to try to just kill him. And it also means that people try to stay alive. If you're low health, then move out of range of the impale. Don't risk dying to the impale, because you'll just spawn corpse scarabs and be out of the fight. Or the impale has about 40 yards range, maybe 45, so you can outrange it, but you just won't be able really to do much while you're out of range. So you can bandage up, for example. So there's the crypt guard that spawned when the locust swarm happened, and at this time the boss is being moved away. Now we're moving up to this area of the room, and this is because the locust swarm has such a large radius that in order to be safe from it, you basically want to avoid being at the other side of the room where the boss is being kited. So that is why we try to kill the crypt guards and basically have stuff happening on this side of the room during the swarm. So now we have other corpse scarabs spawning also. The boss will make dead crypt guards explode, and from the corpses, more corpse scarabs will spawn. That means that the mages have to be, it can DPS the boss while standing near the corpses so that they're ready for AoE when the corpses explode. In the meantime, the tank has moved the boss from one side of the room to the other and tanking him in like the exact opposite position. And basically this is the entire fight. That is what's going on a rotation. A locust swarm is counting down. When that happens, the boss will be kited back, another crypt guard spawns, and that's pretty much the fight. Does anybody have any question about this?
Any consumables I need to have for it?
That would probably depend on what class you're playing.
I meant like fight specific consumables. That's the main thing I want to know for every boss is what are fight specific consumables.
What you could do is I would bring Knockenfoggers if you don't have any way to get Slowfall from a class spell. And also if you really want to be safe, you could pop a nature protection potion, which will absorb some of the damage from Locust Swarm if you do not manage to get out of range of it. But it shouldn't be too much of a big deal to get out of it. You would not need a nature protection potion.
So should we just be popping noggin fires the entire fight to keep the slow fall up? Once we focus on the boss after the crypt guards are dead?
I would try to have it up all the time, yeah. But obviously you only need it when you're near the boss. In the beginning, when you're killing crypt guards, you will be out of range of the impale when you're over here. So it's only the impale that knocks you up in the air. So when you move close to the boss, you will need a slow fall. Alright, so now we're at Grand Widow Fairlina. So we've been at Nubricon, now we work our way through here. There's some trash, and there's a lot of trash actually in this room, but we won't see that in the video, but that's gonna take some AoE and a little bit of stuff. We're not really covering the trash mobs here. So we got to Fairlina, the second boss, and there's a lot of ads here. There are two different types of ads. There are the worshippers, and then there are the followers. There, I believe it's the followers that need to be killed. So this is a follower, and this is a follower, and the four black ones, they are the worshippers. And so basically, we will attack and kill the followers, and then we'll go on to Grand Widow Fairlina. The four black ones we will not be killing. They will be picked up by tanks and tanked somewhere close to the platform where the boss is going to be, either here or here, doesn't matter. And they'll be tanked there so that they can be used later in the fight. The the boss has an enrage mechanic where that you can only remove by mind controlling these 4 ads and bring one of them close to the boss and then use a special ability. So that's what we'll be seeing in this video if they actually do manage to not fuck it up. So they're starting out, it's a little bit clusterfuck, but they're spreading out the ads away, getting the ones that are being killed. That was one that just died, and they're moving on to the second one. It's getting killed. The other ones are being brought away, and now everybody's on the boss. At this point, the boss fight is in the hands of our priests, pretty much. If they manage to mind control the ads and get rid of the enrage, then you have a kill. If they got that covered, then it's a kill. For everybody else, it's just pretty much a face roll on the boss, except for them, not so much. I think the person just over aggroed there. There is also going to be some rain of fire going on, just like at Gehenna's. Just move out of it, big deal. And there's also going to be some poison volley that can be removed by the druids. So we see the enrage timer go down. The first one will kick in about a minute, I believe, after the pull. So we have 10 seconds left until the boss will go into enrage. Now, when there's 10 seconds left, what the priest would want to do is mind control one of the ads and bring it up next to the boss so that it is ready to use the special ability when the enrage kicks in. But I don't see any of the ads getting ready here, so this looks like they're in trouble. Now the boss is enraged, and that means she deals a lot of damage. The tank can survive this if he uses shield wall. If he doesn't, he will die very quick. And that's what he just did. So that's what happens when your priests are not getting that mind control ready and getting rid of the enrage. So I believe this is a wipe. So we try again. So they're killing the 2 ads first there, moving on to the boss. And the 4 other ones are being tanked over here. Again, the rain of fire can spawn on top of the boss, so the tank just moves the boss. So we see here an ad is being mind controlled. The enrage is about to pop and should be ready to get rid of it. The enrage has now happened, and now the ad used the special ability, and when doing so, it killed itself. That also means that you're going to run out of ads during this fight. You only have 4 times to get rid of the enrage before you're out of ads, and eventually the boss will kill the raid. But as you can see, the boss is already half dead at this point, so that should not really happen. If you have decent DPS, this is not something to worry about. Because you have many ads to spare, what you could do is you could use the sacrifice ability before the boss is enraged. What this does is it puts a delay on the enrage. So let's say there's 5 seconds until the enrage kicks in. If you sacrifice an ad then it would be 35 seconds until the enrage. So you win 30 extra seconds by using it before the boss is enraged. However, if you use it after the boss has enraged, then you remove the enrage and you put a 1 minute delay onto the next one. So it depends on, like, do you want to have a fight without the enrage happening? Then you're going to run out of ads much quicker, but it's also safer for your tank because he might need to shield wall to survive just 1 or 2 seconds. So that's up to the officers what they'll decide what we're going to do. So on this fight, you could use a fire protection potion for the rain of fire, or you could just pay attention, run out of it. A nature protection potion could also absorb some of the damage from the poison volley, but again, it's not something that you'll die from. But you have plenty of consumables, you could use both of them. And we'll probably be asked to do that on progression. So after this, we got just leftover ads that would kill that the fight is done. Any questions about this? Then we'll move on. So now we're at Naxx. So we've moved from Farlina down here, all the way up here, and into Naxx's room. So up here we have a couple of timers. One is called cocoons, one is called spiders, and one is called web spray. And then we got another one here called necrotic poison. The necrotic poison is only important for the druids. It basically means that you should have abolished poison on the tank the whole fight. But the three up here is the primary abilities of the encounter, which is cocoons, spiders, and web spray. So the first thing happens 20 seconds after the pull, that's cocoons. And that means that 3 random players get thrown up onto the wall at the side of the room and will have to be freed by ranged DPS. The next thing that happens is the spiders that come, they spawn underneath the boss. Then they'll be AoE'd, you can pop a sapper charge, and then they're gone. And then the last thing is the web spray. The web spray affects everybody in the raid. It's a 10-second stun. It includes the main tank, it includes the healers, it includes everybody. Everybody gets stunned for 10 seconds. Of course, not the boss, which means that she'll be attacking the tank during this time. So 10 seconds without a heal means that the tank will die unless the healers have coordinated like who's going to put up the healing over time effects up on the tank prior to the stun. So you need a druid with abolished poison, regrowth, rejuvenation, you need a priest with renew, you need a priest with shield, you need a priest with 8 out of 8 tier 2 to get that extra hot on there. Once you got all that, then the tank should be fine during the 10-second stun. And that's what we see here, everybody's stunned for 10 seconds. And that is basically the rotation that is going on. So now we're back to the same thing. It's like a 40-second cycle. As we have the cocoons, spiders, web spray. Cocoons, spiders, web spray. That's the 3 things that really goes on here. Until the boss gets down to 30% and goes into berserk. So here cocoons are happening, and this is what happens when you get into cocoon. You get thrown up on the wall, can't do anything, but you're taking damage from being inside the cocoon, and you need to be saved by ranged DPS, and then you're back in the action. Another important thing is that the boss needs to be faced away from the raid, because it does a frontal cone ability. So make sure that you're not, I don't know why you would be, but don't be a boss. So now the boss is enraged, berserked, cannot be removed, just gotta power through it. But what's important here is that the stun that'll happen, that the boss will deal much more damage, right? So HOTS might not be enough to save the tank here. So you need to have a tank on this fight that has shield wall ready, so that if the raid can't finish the boss or the stun happens, then he can survive with shield wall. So there's the stun. And that's a dead tank. But they got the kill anyway. Any questions about this? So at the end of each wing, there's going to be a teleporter that when you use it, you get teleported back to the center of Naxxramas, and then you can proceed into another wing. So the next wing that they're going to go for is the abomination wing. So in this video, we're skipping all the trash. but we're basically moving into this red area here. So what they're seeing here, they're gonna go through here, into a circular room, into here, and there's a lot of trash all the way through here. But once that's all gone, then that's basically all the trash in Abomination Wing. Then they arrive at Patchwork. So Patchwork is a very simple fight. There's not anything to move away from or react to or damage dealers. You basically just stand put and DPS the whole fight through. There's only one special ability called Hateful Strike that the boss will use. And he's going to use that on 3 different tanks, the so-called soaker tanks, that are only there to absorb these hateful strikes. The main tank in the fight is going to take all the auto attacks from the boss, which also does a significant amount of damage, but not quite as much as the Hateful Strike does. So only 4 people should be taking damage in this fight. Everybody else is just all out on damage. The Hateful Strike will hit every 1.2 seconds, and before it's mitigated by armor, it deals about 30,000 damage. So after armor is taken into account, after defensive stance is taken into account, etc., it'll deal between 6 to 8,500 damage. So that means that whenever this damage is happening every 1.2 seconds, that's a lot of healing that needs to be done. So the soakers need constant flow of heals in order to survive. So let's see how they do. So the first thing that went wrong is people not waiting for the tank to actually build aggro. So give the tank time, and that's a wipe. So here, it's a very good idea if the priests and shamans can make sure that ancestral fortitude is up for that extra armor bonus, because if you don't, this can happen. He died instantly. The boss deals a lot of damage, so I'm not joking when I'm talking about constant healing needs to happen. You can see here the Hateful Strikes are taking massive chunks of health with every hit. A lot of those hits are going to be parried and dodged, which is great. But if you're not dodging and parrying like a couple of Hateful Strikes in a row, it's going to be very messy. So healers cannot blink for a second here. They really need to be on the ball on the tanks. But aside from that, this is just a face roll fight. So we're going to skip this. Any question about this? You still hear me, by the way?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Everything's going good.
Okay. So this is Grobulus. A much different fight from Patchwork in that on this fight, everybody really needs to know what to do. There's going to be poison clouds on the floor that everybody needs to know what to do with those poison clouds, but we'll get to it. So the first thing that the boss is being picked up, and on this fight they are deciding it to bring it around the room in a clockwise direction, but you could also bring it and kite it in a counterclockwise rotation around the room. That doesn't really matter. That's up to the officers to decide. Whatever, doesn't really make a difference. But in any case, they're grabbing the boss, and behind the boss there's going to be poison clouds spawning. That means that the tank will need to move the boss. The poison cloud will increase in size over time. So basically the boss has to be moved slowly throughout the whole fight, and people need to watch the poison clouds and not stand in them. They don't do as much damage as the poison cloud at Lord Kree, but they probably do as much damage as the poison clouds on visitors, which means you don't die instantly, but you don't want to stand in them, because you will take significant damage. So the boss is being moved, and the poison clouds are happening behind the boss. But we also see that some players are getting injected. When you're being injected, you're going to get a debuff for that last 10 seconds. When that 10 seconds is up, you're going to put a poison cloud on the ground where you're standing. That means that during those 10 seconds, you need to find a place there where you can place that poison cloud. And any place is good except for the direction that the tank is moving the boss. The poison clouds stay on the ground for about a minute, and they grow in size over time. So you really want to try to use the space where the boss has just been kited. So for example, this area over here is a very good spot. If the melee, for example, get injected, you would move over here because you know that the boss is going to be moved in this direction. So poison clouds over here is very good. You can see this fallout slime. That's another ability. The boss will do a frontal cone ability, which should only hit the tank, because he's the only one who should be in front of the boss. However, if the melee are trying to dodge the poison clouds, and because they spawn under the boss, they might try to get in front of the boss at some point. If they do get hit by this, then they also spawn a fallout slime. Every player who gets hit by the frontal cone ability will spawn one fallout slime, which means if shit hits the fan, we could have 15 fallout slimes, but ideally we should only see one slime every time the boss uses his slime spray ability. So you could have the melee kill it, or you could have the ranged kill it, doesn't matter, it's fine. It gets killed pretty quickly, and then we're back to the boss. So what to keep in mind here is always keep an eye out for, do you have the injection, right? The add-on will tell who is being injected. So your name might be called out, probably will. So when your name is called, you should know what that means. You should know that you need to run to a good place to pot a poison cloud, which could be, like, let's say you're the skull here. That actually means you do have the injection. So, okay, we couldn't really see where he's running to, but so if you're the skull here, a good place could be at the corner here, like at the edge. If you're able to place the poison clouds so that they overlap, that's pretty good. That's like the best use of the room that you could do. Another important thing is that whenever you get the disease, I said it lasted 10 seconds. For priests and shamans, it's very important that you don't immediately look at your decursive and start removing those diseases straight away. Because if you remove the effect, you put a poison cloud on the ground where that player is standing. So if that player has not had time to get out of the raid, then when you remove the effect, you basically just put the cloud in the middle of the raid. So again, that's important for everybody to know what the mechanics in play are here. Priests and shamans should disregard their decursive, should not be removing the disease unless you're assigned to do it. Or unless you've been told this is you who got responsibility to get rid of that effect. Or just let someone who's comfortable on the fight take care of that role, because you can really screw it up if you just remove the effect like immediately, or use a disease cleansing totem, something like that. Don't do that. Nature protection potion is obviously very good on this fight. Any question about this fight? again, I'm not reading any chats or anything. If you want to ask a question, if you don't want to speak, but you could type a question in the Twitch chat, I'll read that. So this next fight is Gluth. Note that you're running into a tunnel here, and you're taking nature damage while you're in the tunnel. So you could pop a nature protection potion before you pull, because if you don't, then everybody in the raid will start the fight with 80% health, and while that's not going to kill anybody, it does make it more difficult for the tank to pick up the boss and bring him into position, because as soon as everybody falls down, the healers will start to heal the raid up to full, and that's going to cause a lot of threat, and they might over aggro from the boss by just healing the raid up to full health. So in order to not give that problem to the tanks, everybody could use a nature protection potion, and then we don't have that over aggro issue to worry about. So don't fall in the hole. And now, once you enter the room, the fight is on. So there's no resurrecting in here. Once you fall into here, it's a corpse run if it's a wipe. So first things first, the boss is getting pulled into the other side of the room. So this was Patchwork, and then we got Gropolis, and now we're into this room over here. You could just pop a major health potion. I guess so, but the thing is that you would like to have the potion cooldown ready in the fight, right? So if you use it at the start of the fight, it's going to be on cooldown, whereas the nature protection potion you could use before you pull and then have your potion cooldown ready in the fight. Okay, so we got the boss being tanked all the way here at the door. It seems like on this server they can line of sight the fear using this. I don't think that's going to work on Kronos. I don't think anybody did that on Kronos 1. I mean, of course, you could try it out, see if it works, but don't count on it. So we got an AoE fear happening every 20 seconds. That is good for the tanks. You're gonna need 2 main tanks for this, because similar to Flankers in AQ40, the boss will put a Mortal Strike debuff stacking up onto the tank. So if you only have 1 tank, the stack's eventually gonna go so high that the tank gets 0 healing. So you need a tank rotation on the boss, and the fear is going to help you rotate between the 2 tanks. So on 1 fear, 1 tank is using Berserker Rage to immune that fear, and on the next fear, the other tank is using Berserker Rage, and so forth. They're swapping using Berserker Rage on every second fear. And assuming that both of them are at the top of threat, then that should allow them to bounce the aggro back and forth this way. And that's how you survive the stacking Mortal Strike effect. That also means that all the melee on the boss will have to be aware that they need to be behind the second tank on threat, and not just below the first tank. The boss will also go into enrage every 10 seconds, which can be removed by the hunters doing the trank shots. So a lot of trank shots need to go out here. 2 hunters can get the job done, but if you have a trank resist, it's gonna be a mess. So 3 hunters is probably a good thing to have. So what we don't see here in this video, because this is a melee point of view, is what's going on at the opposite side of the room. Right? We're seeing what's going on here at the boss, but there's a whole different fight taking place at the other side of the room, which we're gonna see from this point of view. So this is a mage at the back, and we see here these 3 pits. There's gonna be a lot of zombies spawning from these pits. Every 10 seconds there's a zombie which needs to be picked up and kited in this area here at the other end of the room. These zombies have a lot of health. They cannot simply be killed, so they'll have to be kited. And we got a mage here, and we got a warrior with the piercing howl supporting, and we also got an earthbind totem here. On this fight, they have ice barrier, they have respect to frost for this fight. It can help, but it can also be done as fire. It's just a little bit more tricky. So more and more zombies are going to spawn during this fight, and You will simply have to kite them until the decimate happens. So the decimate happens 1 minute 45 seconds after pull. What it does is it puts everybody's health down to 5%, both the raid and the zombies. That means that the zombies actually become killable at this point, and that's the next step after the decimate. That is killing all of the zombies that have spawned. But for now, we're just kiting them and trying to survive. Whenever you take a hit from a zombie, you get a stacking debuff, which increases physical damage taken. And that means that one zombie is not going to be enough to kill you, but if many zombies hit you, eventually you will get one shot. So that means that even tanks cannot tank these zombies because they'll get the stacks and get killed eventually too. So kiting is the only way to go about handling these zombies. Now we have decimate coming in about 6 seconds. What is important to note here is that the tanks on the boss at the other side also get reduced to 5% health. So healers need to plan out a nature swiftness rotation so that they can get the tanks up to full health immediately after the decimate. When the decimate hits, everybody gets down to 5%, and so does the zombies. And another thing happens is that the zombies will reset all the threat. So they're no longer being kited by mages, they're no longer targeting anybody, they're instead going to move very slowly in the direction of the boss. Then the objective is to kill them. You can move up to them and attack them, they're not going to aggro you, so you can just go up and fight there. If they manage to reach the boss, then he is going to eat them and restore 5% of his health. That's why we want to keep the zombies as far away from the boss the whole fight, and make sure that we kill all of them after the decimate before they reach Bluff. At this point, after one decimate, we are going back to kiting zombies. Now we got the aggro from them again, and we're back to, we could call it phase 1, where it's basically just kiting zombies around. And while this is going on, all the melee are doing all the damage to Gluth and basically killing the boss. With the warlocks and with the spare mages, they're gonna kill the boss while we are taking care of this down here. And it's very likely that you're gonna kill the boss before the second decimate. If not, you're gonna be pretty close. So the enrage timer, nothing to worry about. You're not gonna see a third decimate on this fight. So any question about this? Right, so the decimate is like 5 seconds away and he's about to be dead too. But as you see actually here, a lot of zombies have moved up here. A lot of healers have gotten aggros from zombies. And part of the reason is not just that the kiters have dead, that could simply just do it on its own. If the kiters are dead, they're gonna move to the healers. But one thing I wanted to say is that after the decimate, the whole raid goes down to 5% health. And healing everybody back to full health is going to cause a lot of threat. And the new zombies that spawn after the decimate, they might go for the healers immediately because they're just dishing out so much healing, try to get everybody up back to full. So actually, if as a melee, it's a good idea to bandage yourself, or just as a healer, you don't have to heal everybody up. There's actually no raid damage going on. The only damage going out on this fight is from the zombies and from the boss himself. So if you're not over aggroing and if you're not kiting zombies, you should not be taking damage at all. So melee who get down to 5%, I would suggest don't heal them. They don't really need healing. Alright, so that's Gluth. And then we are on to the next boss, which is Thaddeus. Okay, so Thaddeus is the guy down here. He's currently deactivated. And before you can get to Thaddeus, you need to kill the 2 mini-bosses called Stalag and Fusion. And one of them is up here on this platform, and the other one is up on the other platform, on the other side. So what you do is you split up the raid into 2 groups. What you do is you have all the melee DPS on this side, and all the caster DPS on this side. And the hunters you place at whichever side is seems to be behind on DPS, which is probably going to be the caster side. So you see this lightning thing here. The boss is connected to a Tesla coil. Right, so this Tesla coil here is a link to the boss. If the boss moves too far away from the Tesla coil, which means like if you're trying to drag him to like the edge of the platform, or if if the tank falls down so that he's trying to run down the ramp to get to him, that means that the Tesla coil will break and then lightning bolts will start to fire on the raid. So the boss needs to be maintained up on the platform, and that goes on the other side too. So there are some abilities that the 2 bosses here have in common, and then there are some abilities that separate them. The things that they have in common is a small knockback, which you should see pretty soon. Right, so I don't know if you saw it, but there was a small knockback. And that means that the tank should be careful not to tank it too close to the edge, because you'll just get knocked off the platform. So try to keep it on the middle of the platform. The other thing is that every 20 seconds, the 2 bosses will throw the tank from one side to the other. And that doesn't really do anything special, except that the healers need to be aware that, don't just tunnel vision on your one target, because half the fight he will be on the other platform. So healers, you're going to be on this side, you're going to be swapping between the different tanks on this platform. So keep an eye out on who is actually tanking on your side. The power surge here is not for Fusion, that is for Stalag on the other side. So power surge increases his attack speed, I believe by 200% or something like that, or 100%. It basically makes him hit insanely quick, and on top of that, Stalag will, all his attacks will be crushing blows. So he is hitting very hard, and when he has power surge up, he is hitting like a truck. So on the Stalag side, make sure you're utilizing all the different debuffs that you can to reduce damage taken. So demoralizing shout, thunderclap, screech, whatever you got. Anything to reduce damage done by the boss, and don't use Curse of Recklessness, obviously. The thing that Fusion has as a special thing is a mana burn, which means that the healers will need to stay at least 20 or 25 yards from the boss. So one place you could stand is over here at the edge of the platform over here. But what they decide in this fight is to stand at the pillar when you're running up. That could also work. The benefit of doing it this way is that if you have a wipe, it's easier to recover and resurrect everybody. But the downside is that if you have, for some reason, some healing issues or aggro, then you will break the link when the boss tries to catch these guys over here. So there's pros and cons to where the healers are going to be standing. So the last thing is that Fusion and Stalag need to be killed at the same time. If they don't, then they'll resurrect back, and then you start all over. So here we see that it's important that people actually do a jump when they go from the platform and onto the other platform. If you simply run off, you'll fall down and you'll have to run up again, try again. So make sure you do a jump there. So now we're at the actual Thaddeus boss, and so we got a polarity shift coming in about 10 seconds, and then we got an enrage timer. So whenever you see this animation, that means that the polarity shift is about to change. So it says Thaddeus begins to cast polarity shift, check debuff. So we check our debuff. It's a blue plus symbol. That means that we're going to go to the right side. But you see everybody going on the left side, they have a different debuff. theirs is a red one with a minus. So it's red left and blue right. And that's pretty much what you need to know about the polarity shift. So you can see you also have another debuff with a number on it. And here it says 18. That means you have 18 people around you with the same debuff as you do. That means that you're gonna take, or you're gonna deal 18, not 18 times as much damage, but you're gonna deal some bonus which is amplified 18 times. So that means you're gonna be doing significantly more damage on Thaddeus, and the more people alive, the more people next to you, right, with the same debuff, the more damage you're gonna do. This we see animation again. Thaddeus begins to cast polarity shift. Check your debuff. Checking the debuff, it's the same one. So we just stay put. Some people run, others stay. You have to check every time. Again, okay, obviously this video is speed up, so it takes a lot more time between the effects, the polarity changes. Check our debuff, it's the same again. We don't move, just stay where we are. Now, if some people don't move, then they will deal damage to everybody around them, and they will also take damage from everybody around them. And let's say that you are red. Let's say you changed to red, so you needed to move, but you weren't picking it up, so you just stayed put. What would happen is you would deal, I believe, maybe 500 damage to everybody around you, but then 18 people, or what it says, 16 people would deal 500 damage each to you. That means you're gone, and you deal 500 damage to everyone around you. That also means that, let's say, 3 people fuck up at the same time. Now you're talking a little bit more damage to everybody. So if too many people screw up at the same time, could wipe an entire side. But the least that could happen is some people dying, which also could make things go bad, because Thaddeus has more health than any other boss in the game, and without a high enough stack, you might not have enough DPS to kill the boss before the enrage timer. So it's not enough that some people survive. You actually need a decent amount of people to survive, so you have high enough stacks that you can kill the boss before the enrage timer. And we see the animation again. As you can see, it's pretty much impossible not to see that that something is about to happen. All you got to do is connect this animation with your debuff. You check your debuff whenever you see the animation, and if it changes, then you run, and then you're good to go. That's all in phase 2 of Thaddeus. Any questions here? All right, then we'll move on to the next fight. So now we are in. How much time is there to swap sides? There's 5 seconds.
Can you also talk a little bit about the end of the fight so not everyone kills each other?
Yeah, so after the boss dies, you will still have your debuff. That means that, like, if you either try to go up and check the corpse, or if you just run straight for the teleporter, not a good idea, because you're gonna kill yourself and you kill other people. And if you survived the encounter, you still got your consumables, then it would suck to lose your consumables after the boss is dead. Another thing is that there is a bug, which is that after the boss has died, then you can take damage from people with the same polarity as you. And that can happen when the debuff runs out, because there might be a delay between, because there's like, it's a little complicated, but basically the effects are not getting removed from every single player at the same time, and so half the raid might lose their debuff, while the rest of them keep their debuff for like a split second longer. And what the game will then check is that it'll say, is there someone next to you that does not have the same debuff as you? And so in that case, the question will be, yeah, there are a lot of people that don't have a debuff at all. Since they don't have the same as you, boom, then damage goes out. So that means that even if you are stacking correctly on the right side and you don't move at all, when the final debuff is removed and after the encounter is over, you could die and kill a lot of people. So what you do to survive is to spread out. Use the room and just don't stand near anybody at all. So that's one way to survive. So, here. Okay. So let's see here. Right. So the next boss is Noth, the Plaguebringer. So now we're in the green area down here, and we're down into this room here. So when the boss fight starts, there's the gate here that's going to go down, so make sure that you actually are inside the room when the pull takes place. Alright, so here we got, we're at a point of view from one of the guys who are assigned to the corner. So in this room...
You need to change the screen.
We need to change the screen?
You're still on the map screen.
Not for me.
Maybe you need to
Yeah, fuck
refresh.
that.
Yeah, try to refresh and tell me if it's the same.
Yeah.
Is it good?
Yep.
Okay, so here we got this guy here. He's assigned to pick up this small ad that spawned here in this corner. So even though there are 4 corners in this room, there are only 3 corners where ads spawn from. And it is this corner here, this corner over there, and this corner over there. So the northeast, northwest, and southwest. That's the 3 corners where the ads spawn. When Noth is on the floor, which he is right now, then you have plagued warriors spawn here. And they are not too difficult, but they do need a tank to be to tank them. And here they got a warlock and a hunter to assist on killing it, and that should be enough. And the same thing is happening in the other corner, also the same type mobs, and in the third corner also. So you have to spare a couple range DPS to take care of these plagued warriors. And they also need a tank, and the tank needs some heals, so that's that. Not too much to worry about from the corners. So now I'm going to talk about the boss. Unfortunately, we can't see too much of what's going on. I'll try to freeze it when he's actually facing. Okay, so you got the boss here. It doesn't really matter where you tank him. But what you see here is a magic effect called Cripple. The Cripple effect slows your movement speed and reduces your melee, or it reduces your strength, I believe. So it reduces the attack power for melee players. So priests will need to remove this cripple and prioritize the tank. Whenever the cripple effect goes on, it will be happening at the same time as the boss is blinking. And so he'll blink just like a mage would blink, but he will reset all threat whenever he does his blink. And when doing so, he casts cripple on everybody in melee range. So that means that there's no threat, there's a slow tank, and the boss is not in melee range of him. And so that means that the priest's gotta make sure that that dispel is quick on the tank, because he needs to run over and grab that boss again. So that's the magic effect. That's the blink and the cripple. That's the same ability, basically. The other thing to keep in mind is a curse. It happens every roughly 50 seconds. And that will put a curse on a lot of players that the mages need to get rid of. The curse in itself doesn't do anything, but if it is not removed within 10 seconds, it gets replaced by another effect which does raid damage. So make sure that everybody get that curse out of the way. Like you really want to, as a mage, you drop everything you're thinking about when that curse happens, and you decurse. Otherwise, it's gonna be a big mess. So here in the corner, there's really not much going on, right? He's not I mean, he's not in danger of anything. This is face rolled stuff, but it just needs to be done. Then we see a teleport here. The teleport is not the same as blink. The teleport is the boss going up onto his balcony, and then you have a balcony phase. That means the boss is not on the floor anymore. He doesn't need to be tanked. He doesn't deal any damage. There's no crippling. There's nothing about that. The thing about the balcony phases is that now stronger mobs are going to spawn from those 3 corners. So when he's on the balcony, the rest of the raid is now focused on the corners. So we got wave number 1. We got some Plague Champion this time, a little bit stronger ad. He's got a Mortal Strike debuff. But aside from that, there's not really too much to worry about from this guy. And I believe he can also be shackled. So this is nothing to worry about. And we got another wave of those Plague Champions, but as you see, they die really quickly. There's no sweat here. So if you're asking, is this really, I mean, this looks pretty easy, and the answer is yes, it is very easy. On the next balcony phases, the ads are going to be stronger, and on the 3rd balcony phases, there will be even stronger. But the thing is, you're never going to get to those phases because the boss will be dead before then, with the amount of raid damage that we know how to do on private servers. So in old videos from back in the day, you would see some of those later stages, but here the boss is just dead. And so this face roll stuff that you just saw, this is as hard as it's gonna get. So now nothing is really happening. We're getting ready for the boss to return to the floor phase. When he does, he spawns into the middle of the room, and everybody can stand ready. The tanks are standing ready to grab him, and the off tanks are still at the corners, grabbing the warriors. So we got the cripple effects with the blinks that's being dispelled, and not much else to do here. So if you would see some of the later balcony phases, then a shadow protection potion could help you out. But since you're probably not going to get to that 2nd balcony phase, I would suggest not to waste the money on that pretty expensive consumable, because you probably will not see those type of mobs. So that's the boss. Any question about this? Alright, so this next boss is Hagen. So before we get to Hagen, actually we are in the Plague Wing still, right? We got from, this is where we fought North, and now this area over here is not part of the boss fight. This is basically the suppression room of Naxxramas. This is where you need to be moving pretty constantly because mobs respawn very quickly. I think it's 30 seconds, or it could be a minute. I think 30 seconds. So the raid needs to move quickly here, and we're going to hug the wall around the corner, and then when we are ready to pull the boss, we run in. And that's what you see here. You're running into the boss room here. So as soon as you run in, the tank will grab the boss and bring him here, and all the ranged DPS and all the healers will run up onto the platform. So you saw all the ranged healers up on the platform, and all the melee DPS obviously on the boss here. So what we got going on at Hagen is called the Hagen Dance, and it basically means that you see the cracks here. There's fire coming out of them, except it's not fire, it's dealing nature damage, so it's some kind of I don't know what to call it, but it's dealing nature damage. So that's the potion that you want to up this nature protection. So what we got here is the dancing on Hagen, which basically means that you need to move and avoid the nature stuff coming up here. And there are 4 different areas in the room where you're gonna be as a tank moving the boss. Like if you're melee, you really don't have to think too much about this, because you can, if you just simply trust your tank, right? If the tank knows what to do here, he's gonna move the boss to where he needs to be, and as a melee, you just follow the boss, and then you should be safe. So that's one way to think about it. If you haven't done Naxxramas before, that's like a good rule of thumb as a melee here, that you don't have to think too much. So, so we see one area here is safe. This is what called like number 3. That's where he is now. 4 is over here, 2 is here, and 1 is over there. So that's number 2 that is safe. I'm gonna put this to normal speed because it's a good idea to get a feeling for how long time you have to move. So this is normal speed. It feels really slow that I'm watching it now, but I think this is normal. Alright, so this is number 1 spot, and we got, what is it, like 8 seconds? You have 8 seconds to move like 20 yards. But now we got another timer that says put on your dancing shoes. Now this means that actually the boss is gonna teleport up onto the platform up here, and then the real dance will begin, so to speak. So now we have all the healers and the ranged DPS move away from the platform and down here at number 1 spot to meet the melee. So that's what we'll be seeing now. He's teleporting up on the platform. The healers and ranged come down, and now we have an eruption, so it's already begun. But now we see that the next eruption happens after 3 seconds and not 8 as before, or was it 9? Anyway, it's much quicker now, right? 3 seconds. You have 3 seconds to move to the next spot, and you see a lot of people was not quick enough. So this is where the practice is gonna happen with getting the dance right and getting a feel for how far do you need to run to be safe and where are the good spots to be standing, and there's gonna be some learning on the road there. So after a while, there's another timer here that says back on the floor. So you got back when you arrive back here to number 1 spot, then you grab the boss, and the ranged and healers move up on the platform. Oh, it's actually number 2, I think. Right, so there we go. Now he is getting brought from number 2 back to number 1, and the ranged and healers are up here on the balcony or the platform. And now you got a repeat of the first phase again. So that is the like the phases, right? Back on the floor, 90 seconds to next teleport. Okay, so in this fight, actually here, so we're in this room right now, but this room is also highlighted. And that's because it's actually part of the boss fight. We just don't see it in the video we just saw, but every once in a while, 3 random players will be teleported and be thrown into this tunnel over here. And so what happens is, I found a video where that happens. So here we see like ranged up on the platform, attacking Gothic, Hagen, I mean. Let me turn that off. And then you get teleported. Now, when you get teleported, you're up here in this end, and the objective is to survive through this tunnel and re-enter the other room. So this is what we'll see. So these small maggots, they deal a fuck ton of damage, and but they move slow, and they have a very low aggro radius. So tip number 1 is try to, don't run too close to them. But as you see, you can actually move quite close without them aggroing. The other thing to keep in mind is these eye stalks, which are basically like the eye tentacles from Sethune. They also do a mind flay that will deal damage and slow your movement. But they're easier than the ones from Sethune in that they have like very, very low health. They'll die to most, like, I think they have like 500 health. Any instant cast is probably enough to kill them. So try to do a fire blast, and that's that. Then they're gone. So in this clip, there was only one eye stalk. That's extremely lucky. You could expect somewhere between 3 and 5 eye stalks when you get teleported on Kronos, and that means that when you get teleported, whenever somebody gets teleported, 3 people will be teleported at a time. So I suggest that you stick together as a group, because especially if you're melee, right, you would want to try to stay close to some kind of ranged DPS who could sort of help your way through to the end. Now, when you get down to the edge here, you'll see that these maggots, you'll have aggro from a lot of the maggots, but they will actually not follow you into this room. As soon as you move into this room, they will reset. So don't worry about those. What you'll have to worry about is the fire eruptions, right? So as the 4th spot is right here next to the platform. So when you're going up to get back to the platform, make sure that you don't run straight into the nature damage and die, right? So you have to keep an eye out on when the eruptions are happening. And I think he just barely managed to survive it with Blink there, but his friend probably died. So I don't know how much of him. You should have a rough impression of what this fight is about now. But does anybody have any question about this fight? And again, if you have if you don't want to say anything, you could type your question in the Twitch chat. I'm not going to be reading any other channels except the Twitch chat because I can't keep up with it. So let's move on to the next boss. Oh, fucking wrong video. Okay, so after Hagen is killed, we move through this corridor and we are on to Loatheb in this room here. So Loatheb is the Shadow Protection Potion boss. For this fight, you're gonna need 3 Shadow Protection Potions on every on a kill basically, but as we might not get a one shot, make sure you bring a lot of Shadow Protection Potions, because if you don't have them, you will simply just die. Because a key mechanic on the Loatheb fight is that the healers can only do 1 healing spell every minute. And that means that that 1 healing spell that they can cast will be cast onto the tank, of course. So that means there's no raid healing going on. So the damage that you are going to take is up to you to restore. If you can't absorb the shadow damage that's incoming, if you can't heal it up, you're going to die. So that is part of this encounter here. So the healers are minding their own business on this fight. They are making sure that they are, casting their healing spell in the order that they have planned out, and that they are not casting it too soon or too late. They got their whole thing going on there to try and make sure that the tank is getting the heals that he needs to get. But for the melee and for the ranged, like for all the DPS, our concern is going to be on these guys over here. So this is called the Spore, and this will spawn every 13 seconds. Whenever this little thing dies, it has like 100 health, so it'll die to 1 attack. When it dies, it will put a debuff on everybody, or not everybody, on 5 players within like close range. So what we would do is that we would say, let's say group 2 goes to the Spore, kills it, they get a debuff, they go back on the bus. Now group 3 to the Spore, get a debuff, back onto the bus, and so on, that everybody in the raid, maybe not everybody, but probably every DPS, it gets up close to the Spore and kills it when it's their time to do so. When you get the debuff, your critical strike chance is increased greatly. I believe it's 90% for casters and 50% for melee, or maybe it's both. Anyway, it's a fuck ton of crit that you're gonna get. And you're not only that, you will also deal no threat while you have this debuff. That means you're going to do an insane amount of damage, and you're not going to have to worry about threat. That's also good for the mages, right? Because whatever ignite that you end up, throwing when you got the spore, right? You got pretty much like you got a 100% chance to crit. So you load up those pyroblasts, and then you go to town with a huge ignite, and you can't over aggro. So that's a pretty unique fight in that you basically go all out. So that is the part of the fight that has to do with killing the boss. Now we're going to talk about how to survive the encounter. So there's timers on the inevitable doom. The inevitable doom is a debuff that gets put onto you, and there's no way to avoid it. It will deal, 2,500? I might fuck this up, but I think like 2,500 shadow damage. And the only way to survive this, you're gonna take more than one of these debuffs during the encounter, right? So you have a shadow protection potion before you start. That takes care of the first inevitable doom. And then when the next one comes, well, you're gonna take damage from that one. But then the shadow protection cooldown is ready again, so then you pop another one. From the next inevitable doom, well, now your potions are on cooldown, but you can bandage. Note to self, if you're one of the healers who go, I haven't trained up my first aid because I'm a healer, I don't need bandages, I can just heal myself, well, you're gonna need to train up that first aid until tomorrow, otherwise you're not gonna be worth anything on Loatheb, because your healing, it goes on the tank, so without bandages, you're gonna be dead. So make sure you actually have first aid. I can't believe that this is something I have to say, but I had to say this on K1, so I'll say it here on Kronos 3 also. Right, so I can't remember the complete order of when to use the shadow protections and bandages and stuff. I'm sure that's going to be called out by the officers anyway during the fight. But basically, the rule of thumb is bring your shadow protection potions, bring your bandages, and that's basically it. Any question?
Troll's blood potions. Do you think that they're useful in this fight or no?
Like anything helps, right? Sometimes you might survive a shadow. Like if you have a troll's blood potion, you might survive inevitable doom with like 100 health left. But hey, that's all you need to continue to deal damage. So maybe you'll survive one more tick. It depends on how much stamina you had to begin with, right? Some people will, like for example, hunters with rank 14 gear, they're gonna have like insane amount of health in decent damage gear, right? So it depends like what you're running with. If you're running in here with Bloodvine, right, you're gonna be one shadow protection potion behind by default, right? So I would recommend using a Troll's Blood, but some people are so geared that they might not need it.
Hey Kano, I just came on Discord.
Okay.
I'm watching your stream too since Hagen. Usually, yeah, ranged DPS and healers should have elixir or poison cleanse. I think for this fight, I should not put the debuff on them.
No, the poison only happens on melee range, I believe.
Okay, yeah, if it's only melee, then no bother.
Yeah, but it's good to have the poison, the elixir poison resistance anyway, because they're good in Naxxramas and the spider trash, if nothing else. You're really gonna need them on the spider trash. Okay, any other questions on lower type? Oh, actually, see here. The bigwigs actually showed an icon for advantage. Okay, so there's a hellstone here. So here, like warlocks before the fight, if you have enough soul shards to make hellstones from everybody, that would be awesome. And if you're running out of soul shards, then what I was talking about here, like from Noth to Hagen. Remember I talked about the suppression room of Naxxramas, where the mobs respawn every 30 seconds. this is a good place for you to harvest a lot of soul shards. So they respawn quick here, so get your soul shards while you're in here, because then we could have your health stones for Loatheb. It really helps out. But yeah, the bigwigs seems to show what effects you need to use. So health stone here, and I believe it also showed a bandage icon before. So yeah, right. So I don't know what kind of version of bigwigs you need in order to see this, but maybe we'll figure this out in a couple days. Alright, but that's Loatheb, and what usually happens is half the raid is dead by the time Loatheb is dead. Because people can't, well, people just don't have the same starting health, right? This guy has like 6,200 something, but some people are not going to have that much. And like, he has 2,300 health left. So like, if he had less than 4,000, he would have been dead right now, right? So how long is the fight, give or take? I don't know, like 5 minutes, 5.5 minutes maybe. Alright, looks like they wiped there. We're gonna skip to the next boss. Okay, so now we are at the deathknight. So after killing Loatheb, they took the teleporter back to the center. Then they got in here and cleared their way through the trash in here, down the stairs, cleared the bottom room here, and now they are at Structure Vesuvius, which is here. So Vesuvius is a unique boss also. He deals more damage than any other boss in the game. In fact, he deals so much damage that no player can tank him. And you need to mind control these ads and have them tank the boss. That's pretty cool. And there's 4 of them, and you'll need to use all of them for the tanking. So what they got first here is they got the Mind Soothe, and they'll have a priest run down there and start the mind control without aggroing. So that's how we probably do the pull here. So let's see how they do it. There's a couple different ways to do the boss in terms of positioning. So I don't know what the officers want to do, but we can take a look at what they do in this video, and then we can see if Prophet wants to do it this way. So this is one typical way of doing it. There's also other ways, but so for this you have one ad up here, and you have the boss being tanked here. And the idea is that the healers are standing here in range to heal the tank, but not in range of the boss, similar to how we do with Firemaw in Blackwing Lair. And so the position is very important for the priests. Make sure that the ad is in line of sight of the healers and is not so far out that the boss moves in and becomes into a line of sight of the raid. So that is again on the priests doing the mind controls. They have the fight in their hands on this encounter. So one reason why you don't want to be in line of sight of the boss is because of his ability called Disrupting Shout. Is that the one? Which is cast 15 seconds after pull. That's alright, fuck it. So I think 15 seconds after on the pull, and then 25 seconds after that, but we'll see. So the point is that the Disrupting Shout is an AoE spell which has 45 yards range, and all the mana users will take, I believe, 4,000 worth of mana burn. But for every 1 mana drained, they'll take 2 damage, which means that basically, if you have near full mana, you're gonna get 1 shot if you're in line of sight of the boss when that shout goes out. And that's why we don't want him to be in line of sight of the raid. But of course, all the ranged DPS will need to be in line of sight of the boss to attack him. So for the ranged DPS, they'll need to simply attack him and then move out of line of sight when the shout is incoming. I know it's a bit late, but can healing totems heal in Lower Theb? I believe so. I believe so, but I don't know if the healing totem triggers the 1 minute cooldown. That I don't know. Because you can only cast one healing spell. And I know that, for example, now we're going back to Loathep talk again for a second. So one thing is, for example, on Loathep, the poison that goes out on the melee. It's very important that the shamans, they can use their poison cleansing totem without triggering the 1 minute cooldown, but they cannot use poison cleanse. If they do the poison cleanse, then they trigger the 1 minute cooldown. So that's important info right there. Because if you accidentally remove a poison, you could screw up your healing rotation, and that could cause the tank to die. So healers must be very be aware that don't dispel things left and right, because you're gonna get silenced from that. All right. Anyway, back to this. So the ranged DPS attacking Vesuvius, make sure that they are running out of line of sight when the disruption shout is coming out. So let's see how they do here. So the ad is being tanked in line of sight of the healers. The boss is not in line of sight of the healers. The other ads are being tanked over here, which is a decent spot. You could also tank them over here, so they're closer to the priest doing the mind control. Not a big deal. That's fine. But just make sure that you're tanking somewhere close to where the priest who is doing the mind control is going to be. So in terms of healing assignments, you want to have a lot of healers assigned to this, to whatever ad is tanking at the time. And you want to have a couple spare healers assigned to these guys over here who are tanking the ads that are being that are not being mind controlled. And the boss will do a lot of damage onto the ad, and eventually he will do so much damage that the healers, they just can't keep up with it. So that means that there's going to be a rotation of the ad. So basically, this guy is tanking right now, and meanwhile that's happening, another priest will be ready to mind control one of the other ads. When that happens, he brings it over and he taunts the boss. Like when you're mind controlling, you will have a pet bar, as you know, and then there's abilities on it. There's only two abilities. There's a taunt, and then there's a shield wall. So the taunt you obviously use to grab the boss and to take over the threat. And then the shield wall you can use immediately too, once you got the aggro, to take some of the damage away. But because the shield wall is on cooldown, that is when the ad is gonna die eventually, because tanking the boss without shield wall, that's gonna suck. That's gonna eventually lead to the ad dying. So that's why you need a rotation. But in addition, when the mind control is broken, you gotta have a tank ready to grab it, tank it over here. But when the mind control breaks, there's gonna be a 1 minute cooldown on that mob. For 1 minute, you can't cast another mind control on that mob. That means that you basically you need to rotate the ads in a certain order, and utilize the fact that basically after a rotation of this, you're gonna find that the only mob that you can only really mind control one mob, because all the other three are gonna be immune to mind control at that point. That also means that if an ad dies, that could really screw your rotation up, because now all of a sudden you need a new ad to go in and be ready to tank the boss, but there's only two left and they're both immune to mind control, and at that point you don't have any other ad to grab the boss. Then he kills another ad and you gotta wipe. So that means that pretty much all the 4 ads need to survive the whole fight, otherwise you run into a problem of running out of ads that you can cast a mind control on. And as I said at the beginning, the boss does so much damage that only the ads can tank the boss. Right. Any question about this? Right. So a lot of talk on this fight. Basically, it's mostly priests that need to do something here. Everybody else, nothing too much to worry about. Range DPS, just line of sight. The disruption shout, that's going out every 25 seconds. So we could watch a little bit about how they do it. The melee DPS around the boss here. You got an ad here. He's actually at a pretty bad spot there, right? So all the healers might have to move here to be in line of sight. So position here is important, right? It's just same as Firemaw. If you're not in line of sight, that could kill the ad. So he's got some effects up here. There was a problem on Kronos 1 where you actually could not put like effects on him, but obviously it makes it a lot easier if these effects trigger, increasing his armor, right? So, and I see that on whatever, on Shithope or Lightbringer or whatever, inspiration and ancestral fortitude stacks, which makes it like gives you like insane amount of armor, but whatever. So we're grabbing and tanking the ads over here, and rotating the ads, bringing them into position. So the problem also is that, like, let's say you don't actually have any ad. Let's say he kills the ad and there's not another one ready. Then all of a sudden the boss is loose, right? He goes for going for a pet for some reason. But the problem is that he's in line of sight of everybody. So whenever that shout is going out, then you're in big trouble. I see they actually managed to bring him back out of line of sight. But that could easily wipe the entire raid. But it looks like it's a wipe. Or what here? So one thing here is that the reason why there isn't an ad there is because the ad that was supposed to tank has died, and the 3 remaining ones are all immune to mind control at this point. So this one has just gotten ready, it seems, and getting mind controlled, and now we can grab the boss. So the 1 minute cooldown is a strong limitation on the encounter. So make sure that the ads are kept alive. Alright, I think I talked enough about this boss. Okay, so the next boss is how long does mind control last? Well, it's not the duration of the mind control that's going to be a problem. The problem is that the shield wall of the mob is running out. And once that shield wall runs out, then the boss simply does so much damage to the ad that you're going to need another ad that has shield wall cooldown ready in order to survive. So the mind control duration is not a big deal, but the boss will just kill the ad when the shield wall has run out. How long is the shield wall duration? I believe it's 15 seconds or 20 seconds. And so basically what you want to do is you want to, basically as a rule of thumb, on every disrupting shout, you want to rotate the ad. So you have 20 seconds of the ad with shield wall and 5 seconds without shield. That roughly makes the timers like work out. So now we're at Gothic, and on Gothic, the raid is split up into 2 raids. One is on the so-called living side, where we are watching now, and the other one is on the undead side or spectral side, whatever you call it. So on here we got ads spawning from these 3 platforms. That's the only place that the ads can spawn. So you could put an Earthbind totem, or you could put a slow trap on here to make grabbing the mobs a little smoother, but it's not a big deal. The Death Knights can be shackled, and the small unrelenting trainees can be polymorphed. which you don't have to do in the early stages of this fight because there's not that many ads. But later on, it can be helpful if you feel like you're being overwhelmed by ads, that you can polymorph the small ads and you can shackle the Death Knights. If you have a lot of priests on your side, this fight's going to be a lot easier. So what we got over here is a rider. That is high priority when that guy spawns. The other guys are being tanked or polymorphed, as we see here. I think that's a polymorph too. Crowd controlling, and kill the rider first. Rider top priority, the second is the Death Knight, and the third is the Unrelenting Trainees. So, as I said, the raid is split up into 2 raids, and so what's important here is that on the other side, all the mobs are immune to magic, and that's why all your caster DPS is going to be on this side. Right, they'll have nothing to do over there. So all your mages and warlocks are going to be here, and all your like fury warriors and rogues will be on the other side. And then you can sort of balance, DPS on either side depending on what you feel like needs it the most. The mobs, whenever you kill a mob on the living side, the ghost of the mob will fly away and will then land on the other side. That means that if you kill 5 mobs at the same time on the living side, then 5 mobs will spawn on the other side at the same time, like 10 seconds later. So that means that, well, that's good to know, because the mobs on the other side, I believe, are generally considered to be stronger. So that means that even if you feel like these guys, that they're really no big deal, just kill them all, get rid of them, that could be a bad idea, because on the other side you're spawning stronger mobs and you're spawning them at the same time, which overwhelms them at the other side. So that is why shackling can be a good idea to avoid killing a Death Knight, for example, which makes it an easier time on the other side. So don't be afraid to CC targets here, even if you feel like there's really no big deal in killing them. It can help on the other side. There's a rider, kill the rider first. This guy is assigned to tanking, so he's obviously trying to grab all the mobs here and get them off DPS and healers.
Could I get a timestamp on where you're talking about? I've been skipping around a little bit.
Well, you can just refresh the Twitch page and then you get the jump up to right now where we are. Otherwise, I wouldn't tell you.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so as you see, a couple of shackles are going on here. We have 3 unrelenting Death Knights being shackled at the same time. This is very good. Right? Ideally, you want all your priests on this side of the room so that you can shackle as many mobs as possible. Right? These mobs could technically be shackled until the boss is dead. Right? That is actually, that's a good thing to do. So now we got a timer. No more ads are going to spawn here. The boss is going to come down and he will spawn on this living side here. Now the boss is surprisingly weak. Like, he doesn't have very much health. Generally speaking, if you get to the boss spawning in the room, the fight is pretty much over. You got the kill. And it should be pretty obvious why. The boss does some shadow bolts. Shadow protection potion will help, although the ads also do shadow damage, so maybe it has already absorbed damage by the time the boss appears. Anyway, good. Why not have a shadow protection on this one? So another thing is the boss teleports from side to side every once in a while, but nothing really to worry about. It's now the gate opens, boss is low on health, it's pretty much dead. So that's what I mean by once the boss is spawned, you pretty much got the kill. So the Gothic fight is all about the ads. It's all about not being overwhelmed by the ads. It's all about not overwhelming the other side, even though your side is fine. So, and we're gonna watch what happens on the spectral side. So as a melee DPS over here, that's what it looks like on the undead side. And on the ghosts that I was talking about, they're the ones you see flying down here. They spawn a spectral deathknight. That's what you're gonna be grabbing as a tank. And you see those small ghosts that does arcane explosion. That's the small trainees, right? So the very weak ones on the other side will spawn mobs that do arcane explosion on this side. So that's why you don't want to just like face roll the weakest ones over there, because on this side they do AoE damage, and that can be a pain. So they can be stunned. So good to know. And there's a spectral rider. And there's also a spectral horse, I believe. So when you kill a on the living side, the rider is one mob, but when it dies, he will spawn as himself, and his horse will spawn as another mob on the other side. The horse has, I believe, like some intercept ability. I'm not gonna go through all the abilities. Fuck it. I mean, this you'll figure it out. So this is your job on the melee side, and you can see the Death Knight can also be disarmed. Tip. Okay, so any question on this fight?
Nope.
Oh, I actually paused the video at the point where it says Spectral Death Knight begins to cast Mana Burn. So the Death Knight can be stunned, so if you see some Mana Burn stuff going on, might as well just keep them stunned as much as possible. Alright, I really need to take a piss, so I will be, let's take a 5-minute break. Then you can, yeah, get a water or whatever. So let's continue at 20:45. 5 minutes. All right.
Let's go.
All right. Right. So after Gothic, this is Gothic's room here, and we work our way through the rest of the Death Knight wing until we get down to 4 horsemen, which at this point is our last boss before we get to Sapphiron and kel'thuzad. So the 4 horsemen is like one of the I would say one of the hardest bosses in the in Naxxramas, which is why most guilds probably would do this fight as the last fight before Sapphiron, because it's just a very complicated fight. So what they got here is they got everybody parked under this pillar to not aggro the bosses up here, which means you would have to go in this direction and approach from this angle. I don't know why they would choose to do this. The gains for this, in my opinion, doesn't outweigh the risk of someone fucking it up. So I would just aggro like straight on. But props to them for making it work, I suppose. Alright, so what they got here is we got the 4 bosses. And these bosses will need to be brought to 4 corners of the room. They have different abilities, but they don't have that many abilities. So there's really not that much to keep track on. There are 2 of the bosses that deal fire damage. That one is Thane and the other one is Mograine. And then there's one that does shadow damage, and there's one that does holy damage with their special abilities. And they do physical damage with their melee attacks. So we got basically we got the room chopped up into 2 groups, basically. So we got these 2 bosses down here. They're gonna have 2 tanks. Well, there's basically 4 tanks taking care of this side of the room, and 4 tanks taking care of this side of the room. And these guys up here, they're the ones doing fire damage. So for the 4 tanks that are up here, they could use like if they have some epic quality fire resistance gear, that probably wouldn't hurt, because yeah, there's gonna be plenty of fire damage going on up here. However, there's no fire damage going up here or going up down here, so the 4 tanks down here just wear their tanking gear. So what it says here, players must stand on the safe spot to avoid getting marks. Now, what are marks? Like every boss here deals every, I believe, 12 seconds, they cast a mark on everybody who is within this radius. But this one up here, everybody who's standing within this radius, they get a mark. And the more marks you have, the more damage you take. And this damage is exponential. So you will not be standing in there for more than, I believe, 2, max 3 marks. Then you will really need to get the fuck out of there, because a 4th mark, you're going to be close to dying every time. So probably by the time you get your 3rd mark, you will be back to the safe spot before the 4th mark hits. But maybe our officers have some other way of doing it. Some guilds say 2 marks, others say 3 could work, or whatever. The point is that you're going to be running a lot in this fight, because you need to get back to the safe spot all the time. So basically this is the safe spot, and in order for this to continue to be the safe spot, the bosses actually need to be at the corner. Yes, you can't just move the bosses around as a tank. You're gonna fuck up the safe spot. That's gonna be a wipe. So that's rule number 1. Then we got our second picture here. That's what I meant with 2 groups. We got, this is the direction that we're gonna be moving. Again, I haven't talked with the officers. Maybe they have another way of doing it. I hope they speak up. They do. We got our red or our orange here. This is the tanks and the groups going up here to the fire bosses, and then we got our other team of tanks going down here. Now we also have our whole healer team The healer team will do this completely different. They're gonna go from boss to boss. But they're not gonna go all at the same time, right? We need to spread them out. So what will happen is every mark, someone will have to move. But I don't think I can do this like here on this this whatever this is. This is something that we would practice like when we get there. Before we go into the four horsemen, we would practice the moving about in this area here or whatever, right? In this here, we would imagine that we're inside this room, and then we will practice, say, okay, the boss is here, there's a boss here, and so on, and then we practice running back and forth to where we need to be, so that we don't have to blow all our consumables figuring it out. So by the time we actually do make the pull, you hopefully have a good idea of how you need to be moving about. Again, it's much easier to do when you're actually in there and can see characters moving and can call stuff out. So I don't know how I could do it. But anyways, let's take a look and see how they're doing it here. So this is their first pull, and they're spreading out the bosses quickly, getting them into position at the corners. We got some people at the safe spot, and we got some people at the bosses. That's mark number 1, right? The mark number 2 is about to happen here. Again, we got the video speeded up here. Standing at the safe spot, nothing going on here, but now we're moving out. And this guy seems to be the tank here, right? So he's got the aggro now. Ideally, you want to move all the way into the corner. This is probably also good. So what we got here is a meteor coming down. That's the special ability at Thane. So the meteor works the same way as the meteors do in AQ40 and AQ20, which means that the damage is split amongst the players who are in close range. This sets a requirement for the people running in and out, in that we know that the tank can't move, right? Because if the tank moves, then the boss moves, they break the safe spot. So the tank can't move until another tank has come and replaced him. Okay, that's info number 1. Info number 2 is the melee and the damage dealers cannot leave the tank by himself, because if the meteor lands while there aren't any soakers around, the tank dies and then it's a wipe. This right here, this meteor is gonna be the thing that's gonna cause most wipes. It's people running out when they shouldn't be running out, and tanks running in and taunting the boss. The other tank is going to his safe spot, but not realizing that the taunt actually resisted. So now he's bringing the boss with aggro back to the safe spot, and then he broke the safe spot. This is what causes the wipes on 4 horsemen. It is primarily this boss right here, the meteor boss. And it's also fucks up the rotation, because when you're being asked to run on the marks, you're saying on every 2 marks or whatever you're running out, you'll realize that the meteor is on another cooldown than the mark. So if you run out when you're being asked to do it, when the mark hits, but the meteor hasn't landed yet, then you're pretty much killing the tank. And so that is, I mean, I can just imagine this going wrong many times, but hopefully it will go wrong fewer times, because I've said this now, that the meteor is a big part of the rotation and running on this boss thing here. Luckily, the other bosses are not as complicated, but the meteor here it's a really tricky one. All right, so let's continue here. So yeah, I don't know what the hell they're trying to do here, but obviously this is going wrong. So that was pull number 1, and now we got pull number 10. We have done a little progress. We learned a little bit about how the fight works. And again, so pull number 10, you can imagine this is what you farm for. So the bosses are being brought into position. Got people at a safe spot, and some people are moving out. Again, this is something we'll practice before we go in. you'll have an idea of if you are starting at the safe spot or if you're starting at the bosses or the corners. You'll know all this, so this is not something I can go now. It depends on what group you're in, it depends on the raid composition, how many healers we have, and so on. So what you see here is hunters. They are moving out to shoot, and then they're moving in to soak the meteor. So they're standing out there, running in, soak the meteor, and then when the meteor hits, then they run out to shoot. That's important. Not just because of them, but also if the meteor lands on them, then they're gone. So that's a good thing to do as a hunter. Another thing to note is that let's say the hunter dies, right? That means that there's one less person to share the damage on the meteor. Now let's imagine we're 2 minutes into the encounter and 6 people have died. Might not be in the same group. 6 people have died. Well, now you have that much. You have fewer people to share the meteor damage with, and then you got a snowball effect because more and more people take damage on the meteor, and eventually that's going to cause wipes as well. So, greater fire protection potion, juju fire, and even some fire resistance gear can be advised on this fight. That some people might disagree. I would recommend, at least for progression, try to stack some fire resistance gear, because on the progression, what you'll really just need to learn is getting like the rotations correct, knowing when to move, getting a feel for like how far is the safe spot really going out, and all those small practice elements. Like dying to a meteor 20 seconds into the fight gives you 0 training. Just make sure that you have enough fire resistance to survive some meteor, even if there aren't a full team here to soak. Right? That's gonna help you. So that's what I would recommend, at least. And then once you get to the 5-minute marks of the fight, people seem to have a good feel for this is something we can do. Then you downscale the fire resistance and go with more damage. How often do tanks swap? What's the queue for tank swap? It's basically with the same as the melee going in and out. So they're standing here. A tank would be standing here, moving out with the melee, and then he's going to swap. So pieces every 3 marks. So that's where we're gonna go. So the healers, maybe they're doing it. Let me see with the healers how they're doing. Okay, so the healers on this fight seems to be doing it. They're running with the rest of the melee. So they're not doing it the way that I did it on one. This strategy could also work. So there's 2 ways to coordinate the healers. One is with the melee groups, and one is with like a squared formation where the healers are going every boss and not going to the safe spot. But again, this is something we'll practice before we go in and do the fight. So we're running in there. At this point, you gotta see that the 1 second to the meteor. Now you gotta make a decision. Are you gonna try to get to the boss, or are you gonna stay out here? Because like your option is you can go and help share the damage, but you could also risk that when you move up there, that the meteor simply lands on you before you even get there, and that kills you. So this is like you need to pay attention to the meteor timer, and you need to actually move with your group. You cannot straggle behind and not catch up later, because they're gonna need you to soak there, and you're gonna need to be in close range of them. The range of the meteor is about 20 yards. Healers can stand out of range of the meteor. They can also run in and help soak the damage, depending on what they're being advised to do by their class leader. It means they'll have to spend a little bit more time running if they want to soak damage. And yeah, I don't know what the healer class leader will recommend. See, that was close, but he made it. So one reason why you We do like they did. After 3 marks run in and taunt happens, 4th mark. I think we should just talk about this when we get to 4 horsemen on release. I don't want to try to figure all this stuff out like here right now. It's either 2 or 3. And Upis I think said 3, so I think that's what we're going. Okay, so another thing is that the reason why you would have all your DPS going back and forth, like between these 2 bosses, is that if you get these out of the way early, then you free up 4 tanks to then be backup tanks down here. Which means basically that once these 2 are dead, the fight is over, because now you have plenty of spare tanks in case something goes bad down here. So maybe we'll do this. I don't know. So now, CO down here. So these are void zones called. They spawn on random players here. So when you're healing down in this corner, or if you're tanking down in this corner, keep an eye out on the floor, or you're gonna die very quickly. This is also gonna be a reason why we're gonna wipe. Is that the healers down here are standing in a void zone and they're dying, and then there's nobody to heal the tank, and he's dying. Then the boss will start to run to someone else who was now at a safe spot, and he breaks the safe spot, and everybody dies. So a lot of people can pretty much cause a wipe by just, being at a wrong spot at the wrong time. It becomes a big snowball effect. That's why it took 10 wipes for them to get this far. Do they stay up the whole fight? No, they don't. They last about 40 seconds. And they go up every like 7 seconds. It makes it a little bit more tricky for the tank, right? Because as we see here, right, if he moves the boss, actually this one down here, if he moves the boss, if he tries to avoid a void zone and brings the boss this way, then he could break the safe spot. So what he would try to do is bring the boss close when he's avoiding. That's his best option. A lot of running back and forth on this fight, and even though there are only 2 bosses left, the stacks that you're gonna get still gonna rise up, right? So even if there's only 2 bosses left, you're still gonna be spending just as much time as at the safe spot. So once the 2 bosses are dead, it feels a lot easier, but it's pretty slow process. That's it. That's 4 horsemen. Oh yeah, so over here, when you get to this part of the fight where those 2 bosses are the only ones left, then you also have a lot of melee DPS running in and starts attacking Zeliek down here. And what you need to know here is that he has like the, like the Sethune beam, the green beam. Imagine Sethune has the green beam, but it will only target players in melee range, and it deals holy damage. That is what Zeliek does. He has like the chain ability that deals holy damage, and it deals more damage with every jump. The Sethune green beam, but deals holy damage, and it will hit his melee target and jump from there. Don't stand close to anybody when you're down here. Then you're fine. And as melee, there simply cannot be that many melee on him at the same time, because you're gonna die. Then there was a question, something about aggro reset. Anybody has a question?
Yeah. Who is recommended to wear the fire resist? Is it everybody to wear just a little bit for the meteors, or is it just the tanks that are dedicated to that corner?
Well, it's the tank, the four. Look, up here, there are 4 tanks covering this area up here. The fire resistance for them is pretty much mandatory, I would say. They need to have, I don't know. It's not like tanking Ragnarok, but it's gonna help you out.
Right.
So
Wear your big ticket items.
yeah, so if you got some really good quality epic fire resistant stuff, then use that. But yeah, by this time you maybe even have some tier 3 pieces, so you also want to consider what kind of set bonus you have to give up. And for everybody else up here, again, for progression, I say why not? Why not wear some fire resistant? Like obviously not green gear shit. You need stamina also to survive the meteor. But basically, just make sure that you have enough health and resistances so that you survive long enough to actually get practice in. That, I would say, is the most important thing. Then once you look around you, people aren't really dying left and right anymore. Then you can start to downscale the resistance and see like how, like, when do you start to feel like you're not comfortable anymore giving up resistance. But then DPS keeps building threat. No, I believe there's a threat reduction with every new stack of marks. That's why the threat doesn't get like insanely high. Like everybody, every what is it, 12 seconds there's a new mark. Even if you don't get the mark, there's just a global threat reduction from everybody every 12 seconds. I believe, not 100%, but I'm pretty sure that's the case, because otherwise you have a like absurd like threat. I don't know what the fuck is going on. So okay, so one more tip on the tanking situation is that okay, so let's say that you're the tank assigned to come and replace this guy. He's the tank, and you're the tank that's gonna replace him. So you're gonna go up and you're using taunt, and then you're gonna taunt resist. Then he sees that he's still got the aggro, so he doesn't do anything. He just waits. Then you do a mocking blow, and then he sees, oh, the boss is targeting you. Good. Now my job's done. I'm going to the safe spot. But of course, mocking blow is not the same like mechanic as taunt. Mocking blow does not transfer threat. It only takes the threat temporarily. So what happens is this guy runs to the safe spot, and then when mocking blow runs out, then the boss goes to the safe spot. So this is also something that we will wipe to, is tanks not realizing that mocking blow is not a taunt. Figured I wanted to mention it.
Could you use that as a buffer? So say you taunt, it gets resisted, you call it out, and you wait 4 seconds after taunt, you mocking blow, they go into position, and then you can get the second taunt before he goes?
I mean, sure. I mean, actually, it's a risk, right? You could get a second resist, and then he's halfway thinking that he's got. But so yeah, Prophet
when you
says
get the
the
first
answer is
resist,
no.
you're fucked anyways.
Well, not necessarily. Like as a tank, you can get more than 2 or 3 stacks, right? I mean, as a tank, you have so much health and you have assigned healers to you, you can take more, and you do have shield wall, and you do have last stand. So for those kind of oh fuck moments where the taunts just seem to be resisted, you have ways to survive it without having to run to the safe spot. But also, we've been running Sul'Gurub 1,000 times and killed the fish boss in order to get the goddamn trinket that gives, 10% chance to hit with spells?
Yep.
And so this is the trinket that all the tanks are going to be using on this fight, so that they reduce the resistance chance on their taunt. That's the whole point of them getting this trinket and having us make sure that they're getting it. It's because it's for this particular encounter. I believe the trinket has like a 90 seconds cooldown or 2-minute cooldown. That's roughly as often as you're going to be taunting on this fight, anyways. So it sort of works out. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say about horsemen. The rest will just come down to practice and there and give it a shot. Okay, so then we get. Alright, so basically, whenever you clear the last bosses in each wing, then you open your access to Frostworm Lair, I believe it's called. And that's where you find sapphiron. So use it first taunt, use it third taunt, etc. CD line 4. Yep, about the CG. Okay, so after 4 horsemen is dead, then we're on to sapphiron. And I saw sapphiron here, and it's not scripted the same way as some. Now I'm taking a video from so let me see here. Right, so so we got this room here. That's the sapphiron's room. And we're basically only gonna, again, this is something the officers will comment on, and maybe they'll have a different idea, but this is what most guilds, I think all guilds did on Kronos 1, is utilize only half of the room. This will make sense for 2 reasons. One, because of our shamans, and the totems need to be in range of everybody. And secondly, for the air phase that we're gonna cover in a minute, that also is helpful there. But for now, we see that the tank is picking up the boss. We only need 1 tank on this fight. He is tanking the boss there. And then we got the rest of the raid split up into 2. One on the left side and one on the right side. So we make sure that the shamans are in the right groups, right players, and so on. We make sure that the mages are spread into both sides, because there's going to be decursing taking place on both sides also. And then we're off. So you're going to have this debuff here. This is the frost aura that the boss is casting. This is basically the debuff that ticks every 2 seconds, and it deals 600 damage. On this video, it deals a little bit more, because on the Kronos 1, the Naxxramas was buffed, deals more damage. But on Kronos 3, it'll deal 600 damage per tick, and if you got resistance, which we all do, resist most of this damage. It ticks down from 5, but don't worry about that. It basically just deals damage every 2 seconds. So now maybe I should back a little. So we got blizzards going on. Blizzards move slow, so you can avoid them, but they deal a fuck ton of damage. Make sure to avoid them. It's also something that I heard a lot of people say that's gonna lag the fuck out of your computer. So make sure that you set your video settings to low on Sapphiron, or you're gonna have a hard time playing on this fight. So what we got here is the primary difficulty, or what you say, of the fight. So these here, I'm an ice block, he says, and these ice blocks are what you need to hide behind on this encounter at the end of the air phase, which we are at right now. So we got a timer here that says ice bomb lands. There's a ball of ice coming from the boss who's flying up somewhere up here. There's a ball of ice that's heading slowly for the ground. And when it hits the ground, it will explode, and everybody who is not behind an ice block will die. Then after that has happened, then the ice blocks disappear and the boss will land. The tank is getting ready to pick up the boss and will tank him at the similar precision as before. And by this time, we are also at the two different sides of the room. We readjust our totems, and then we are on to a repeat of the first ground phase. So you can consider this fight like a two-phase fight, whereas the ground phase and then the air phase, and everything is pretty much the same the whole fight. So the frost aura is going on the whole fight. You're gonna need to repop the protection potions, or you might need to use mana potions, or demonic runes can be used. If you have a lot of gold, if you have shadow protections to spare, I would recommend taking a shadow protection potion, demonic runes, right? So you absorb the damage from those demonic runes. Another good use for the shadow protection potion is this curse that you just saw here being removed. It deals a lot of shadow damage, but usually it should be removed before it takes for damage. So Ayaz is asking, why are they split on two sides? Well, one reason is because of the blizzard. The blizzard will chase different targets similarly like the earthquakes do on Uber, which means that if you have everybody on top of each other, then the blizzards are going to be on top of each other, or on top of everybody. But if you have the raid split up in two places, then sometimes they'll have to, move from side to side, which means from that most of the blitz are actually going on outside the raid. That's one reason. The other reason is when the air phase is happening, you want to be able to spread out pretty quickly. And I'll explain why in a minute. So now we got another air phase. As soon as the air phase happens, everybody spreads out, right? When I say spread out, I'm talking about only half of the room being utilized. But before we were stacking up in two close groups, close to the totems. Now in the air phase, we're using the entire half of the room. Another thing we want to try to do, at least I would suggest that we try to do this, is that we have people stack on top of each other. Not many, but in pairs of two, can have people stack up on each other. And the purpose of this is to make the raid stack up closer. Because if everybody has to be like 10 yards from everybody else, then we need more space. But if everybody stands on top of one other person, right? So we're standing in pairs, then you could like have the whole raid fit in on a much closer space. And the benefit of that is that the ice bombs that are that are being cast, that are forming the ice blocks, well, the closer the raid is to each other, the shorter everybody needs to run in order to get to the ice blocks. So that is why having the raid stack up pretty close to each other in the air phase also helps people survive the trips to the ice blocks, which is one of the main reasons people die on this fight, is because we're spreading out too far. Like, let's say we have people like all the way over here, and what's the reason not stacking more than two people on top of each other? That is because whenever you are getting hit by a frost bolt, you take a lot of frost damage, and so does everyone else close to you. So basically splash damage. That also means that let's say an ice block appears. Why don't we just go and hide behind the ice block, right? Might as well just go do it now, and then we're safe. Bad idea, because if a lot of people do that, then and the boss is not done casting his frostbolt, then you have 10 people behind an ice block, all taking the same splash damage. That's like that's far too much damage for the healers to catch up and heal up again. So that also means that when the ice blocks and frostbolts are going out, we actually have a rule of thumb. The rule of thumb is don't start running behind the ice blocks until all the ice blocks have appeared. And there's gonna be 5 in total. So basically you watch the boss and you watch people on the floor, keep a track on how many ice blocks do we have, watch the timer, and when you know that there are not gonna be any more frost bolts coming out, then you start running. The other rule of thumb is not wait until the last ice block has appeared if the 4 other ones are like in the other fucking end of the room, right? Because at that point you're rolling a dice that the 5th and final one is gonna land close to you, so close to you that you can survive. So in that situation, that scenario, if let's say you are over on this side, but 4 of the blocks are fucking over here, then the first rule of thumb is don't run too early, but the second rule of thumb is don't fucking run too late when all the ice blocks are over here and you're in Africa, right? So that is how figuring out the balance between those two is gonna lead us to defeat this encounter. Because if you only do one or the other, you could die. You need to think about what are the chances that a 5th ice block is gonna spawn perfectly in front of you, and what is the probability that it's gonna spawn in a fucked up place and then you have no hope in getting over there. That's what's gonna cause us a lot of wipes on Sapphiron. It's called RNG, and it's called people not learning by their mistakes, getting accustomed to like how far can you actually run, how much distance can you close. Like as a mage, I can blink, right? So a lot of people, a lot of classes are gonna die in situations where I can manage it because I have blink, or a rogue can manage it because he has sprint. So give people a chance to figuring it out. Like some classes have an easier time surviving this stuff. So the life drain, basically all we have to know is remove the curse when it happens. If you don't, it starts to take for a lot of shadow damage. But look, it was removed like immediately. This is really nothing to worry about. As long as the mages are alive, and as long as the mages are split out evenly in both groups, this should not be anything to worry about. Does anybody have any questions about this fight? Right, so let's see another air phase. You see, I'm stacking on top of battle here. See an ice block over there. There's an ice block over there. At this point, I know that this is the one I'm going to hide behind. So at this point, I'm not too worried. So at this time, when I see that last timer ice bomb lands, when I see that, I start running. We see one person not quite making it. Is there a limit on how many you can be behind an ice block? No. Alright, that's all I got for sapphiron then. Let's move on to the last boss. Alright, so kel'thuzad has 3 phases. By the way, melee should also stay as far as they can in melee. Yeah, okay, so now I just shut down the video. But you'll see as a melee that the aggro, the hitbox of sapphiron is just like gargantuan. Like you can really be far away from the boss. And that's also good to know because of the tail swipe. There's a nasty tail swipe. When you're attacking from the side, you really gotta watch that. But yeah, it also means that in the air phase, when I said that we want to be stacking up in pairs, it also means that because the boss has such a huge hitbox, that you can actually use a lot of space and still be in range to hit the boss. So try to work that also. That's something you'll figure out, like how far range you got. Okay, so now we get to kel'thuzad. So the first phase is the raid stacking up into center of the room. And as you see on the minimap over here, we got these chambers, and then we got the entrance of the room being blocked and also working as a chamber, and then you have the boss behind us here. So the boss doesn't do anything at all in the first phase. And the first phase, as you see up here, is about 5 minutes. The first 5 minutes, this is what the fight is about. The ads are gonna come to life one by one, move towards the center. Now these small skeletons, if they reach somebody in melee range, fuck, I forgot what the fuck they did. So the Soul Weaver is the one that if it touches anybody, it will deal a massive amount of AoE damage. Oh yeah, the small skeletons will do a small AoE damage. I believe that's... They do AoE shadow damage to the raid, yes. But not very much. It's just an annoyance, right? The raid can survive getting hit by... Like, let's say the small skeleton reaches somebody and lands a melee attack, then they will do AoE damage, but it's not enough to kill anybody, but it will still suck. However, the big ghosts-like looking things, if they touch somebody, they also do AoE, but that will wipe the raid. I believe that's how it is. So as you can hear, this is not something that really happens a lot. I don't think we ever have had a wipe to this on K1. Nobody ever got hit by the ghosts. But again, we also had pretty good gear by then, right? Naxxramas came out like a year after AQ40, so we had like amazing gear at this point. We were able to dish out a lot of damage, and I don't know. We'll see how comfortable we are at that. But anyways, the golems here need to be tanked and need to be killed by the melee, while obviously the ghosts can't be attacked by melee because nobody can get close to them. And the same thing with the skeletons. Melees don't want to go over and bash the skeletons, right? You're just gonna take damage, like AoE damage. So this is the whole first phase of the fight. And the video is speed up, so now we only got 30 seconds left of it, and near the end, the ads are gonna spawn a little bit more rapidly. And it's gonna feel like there's more things to kill near the end of the phase. And that also means that there might even be ads alive when the second phase begins. And this is not a big deal, right? We just kill the ads, and the ghosts move so slow that the ranged can take care of them and kite them around, right? It has like nearly 80% health, but that's fine. It moves so slowly that the ranged can kill the ad while the boss is being done here at the middle here. So what we got here, I've got so much shit to pay attention to. I need to slow this down. So the boss is being tanked in the middle. The melee are being spread out. This here is I forgot what the name of this is. But basically, after like 5 seconds, there's gonna be like a shadow thing coming up here, and it's gonna kill you if you don't move out of it. And for the melee, this ring can also spawn underneath, I believe it's called Shadow Fissure. It can also spawn beneath the melee, and because they're stacking up, like with 3 or 4 people on top of each other, it seems like over here, that means that all will need to move. Detonate mana is another thing, which is happening over here. That's the arcane explosion looking thing. Basically, when you have detonate mana, you get like sparkles all around you, and then you need to make sure that you're not standing close to any other players, because you're gonna detonate, lose a lot of your mana, and drain a lot of mana from everybody around you, or deal damage or something. Basically, don't stand next to other people. But that's not a problem, because you're at this point you should already know your position. At this point, you should also already have practiced what your positions are gonna be in this second phase. And similarly to Sethune, you're gonna make sure that when you're standing, you're not standing close to anybody else. You're using the space of the room. Now, luckily, a good way to do this is by basically, you can use the room for practice without aggroing the boss. The first phase starts when somebody moves into this ring. So when you move into the room, you can practice your positions, like for phase 2, without worrying about aggroing anything. So by the time you get to the second phase, everybody should know where they need to be, and there shouldn't really be much thinking going on, and it should not be chaotic at all. Basically, just move to your position, and then the only thing to worry about once you're there is to when you're on, and this is underneath you, and when you get detonate mana, you just make sure that you're not standing close to anybody, right? So not too much to worry about here. It looks like there's a lot of stuff going on, but there really isn't. Famous last word. Okay, let's continue. So what we got here is the AoE Frost Volley. And I resisted that. I still have a lot of frost resistance. I'm still using the gear that I used as sapphiron. Because, well, you're just going to resist a lot of damage, and that's going to help everybody out. Like some people say you only need frost resistance for sapphiron, but in terms of this fight, the only damage that I'm going to take is the frost damage. So, if I can help the healers out a little bit by not taking a lot of damage, then might be a little bit slower, but again, for progression, the objective is to have uptime on the fight, not necessarily to kill it. The objective is to stay alive for as long time as you need to practice the encounter without having to repop your fucking consumer. That's the whole purpose of progression, is getting as much practice in with as few consumers as possible. That's the whole, at least my opinion. So this what we got here is mind control. Keep an eye out on people getting mind control and polymorph them, CC him. Nothing new. We've seen this mechanic before. Keep in mind though, that could be a little tricky when people like priests get mind controlled, they psychic scream, people, positions get all messed up. Just go back to your position afterwards and you're fine. So you see 4,000 damage from the Frostbolt volley, but a nature protection potion took care of a lot of that. So 4,000 damage, that's like, I would say that's a good reason to use some frost resistance gear. Another source of incoming damage is the frost blast. I actually got an add-on for it here, but it's basically a healer add-on. It tells you who is in a block of ice and needs to be healed, basically. Whenever you're in the blocks of ice, you take, I believe, 20% of your health and damage every 20 seconds, every seconds or something. And because this is overtuned, they do a little bit more. Not entirely sure, but the point is keeping track of the frost blast, and you know, the target might not be in range of you, but he might be, right? So you cannot really pay too much attention to 130% of the health within 6 seconds. That's probably right. So it is like when as a healer, you don't really worry too much about like who these targets are. If you are in range to heal them, you just heal them, because there's not really that much else to heal here, except for people not wearing frost resistant gear and taking a ton of damage over time. So the possible mind control happens about roughly every 1 minute and lasts like 15 seconds. I think we can speed this up again. So keep track on how much I'm actually moving on this encounter. Like, even though there's a lot of things that you need to react to, I'm not really moving that much. Nobody else is either, right? I'm moving in to be in range to polymorph somebody, then I'm moving back to my position. I'm moving out of the shadow fissure, giving myself advantage. This is the hardest fight, okay? But there's not that much to react to. It gets more tricky at the third phase. We're still in the second phase now. This is my Sethune water add-on. Tells me when I'm close to the. I'm not that good at watching it apparently. Okay. Right, so when the boss, I believe, I can't remember, it's 40 or 30%. When he gets down to, okay, let's see. Yeah, okay, so 40% is phase 3. That's when the guardians are gonna spawn. And so that there at the back is a guardian. And as you see, that can be shackled. So make sure to shackle it. There's gonna be, I believe, 4 or 5 in total. And yeah, 5 in total. And you can only shackle 4 of them. It's not like there's one that you can't. All of them can be shackled. But the point is that if you have 5 shackles up at the same time, 3? Sure? All right. Well, we'll figure that out. But you might be right. So 3 shackles at the same time here, and basically, if somebody tries to shackle the 4th one, then all the shackles break, and that means that we can use shackles, and we should use shackles, but we should not use shackles mindlessly. We have to keep track on how many shackles are going out, and the priests that are close to them will have to do it, right? If you just assign 3 priests to shackle, but those 3 priests are fucking other end of the room, then that's no good, right? So the priests need to communicate and spam some kind of macro and saying, no more shackles or something. Somebody needs to make sure that that doesn't screw up. It also means another thing. It means that there's going to be 2 of these guardians which need to be tanked, and they need to be tanked for the rest of the fight. So even though you need how many tanks do you need on this? You need 1, and then you need a backup, right? Because the tank might get mind control, right? You got a backup. I feel like I'm forgetting like something with the tanks and like how many tanks you.
From the guide I read earlier, you want 3 tanks.
From the boss?
Well, in phase 1, and then when the mind controlling, well, basically when the tanks, the 3 tanks, they need to be high on threat, right? And when the Nerubians spawn, basically the lowest tank just tanks one of the Nerubians. That's at least what I read on the guide that was linked on the forums. but I'm not sure.
Okay. The Perfect says all stop DPS, each mind control. Yep. Right. Yeah. So every time mind control happens, there's gonna be a threat reset. And in case the tank gets mind control, right, you don't want to aggro. So whenever a mind control is incoming, everybody stops their damage, and only tanks keeps going. And then whoever is tanking after that, whoever has the aggro of the 3 tanks, he's gonna be the tank. And then in the third phase, when these guardians need to tank, well, the 2 tanks that don't have the aggro at that point, they go off and grab a guardian each. So if the guardians are not picked up, if the guardians go from target to target, they actually grow stronger. Every time the guardian changes target, he gains a buff, and he deals more damage. So make sure that we have tanks, you know, when the third phase is about to begin, right at 40%, then the tanks quickly realize, okay, who's gonna be lower on the threat, who's going off to grab guardians. And then what the hell happens the second time the mind control happens, when you at that point only got 1 tank on the boss, and then the 2 are off tanking guardians. This is like what I mean by that's when this fight becomes really interesting. I don't really have an answer for that. Maybe we need more tanks to take care of that problem. But I'll let the officers figure that out. What they're gonna do. So that's like as soon as kel'thuzad is dead, the guardians run away, and you've beat the game. So congratulations.
You beat the game.
Yeah. Any questions about kel'thuzad? Well, then I'm out of content. I don't have anything else to tell you. So thanks for tuning in, and let's fucking destroy Naxxramas.